You probably all registered when you walked in the hall. If you have not, please make sure you register at a break. At registration, there should be a pack of paper. Emergency contact information is on the top, back through like photo release, so when we're doing our marketing, medical release, stuff like that in case something happens in an accident. Please go through and make sure it's current. We've had accidents in the past where somebody will come in and be like, dude, you called my ex-wife. And it's like, yeah, because she's your emergency contact on your form. Make sure you update that. We actually use those in the event of a problem. And believe it or not, we don't know who you want us to call unless you tell us. Along those same lines, the union, the company, none of us are mailing things out anymore, so we don't get return paychecks to know you've moved. So if you do move between now and next year, shoot the office an email, let your supervisor know, because periodically we do like to send things in the mail just so we can communicate with the field. We're trying to do it with email, but email and snail mail are both hard to get everybody 100% of the time. If you go back outside registration, if you were to continue out to the right, that's where all the restrooms are. If you were to go to the left, that'd be emergency exits, just for that housekeeping. We got two new guest speakers. We got Derek Hill. Most of you probably met Derek. He's with Surety HR. He's been doing our safety inspections the last year or so. I'm getting good feedback, but it's always nice to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. But it sounds like he's been doing a good job working with our people, not just telling them what they're doing right or wrong, but working to understand what is it they're doing. Are we doing it the right way? Is there something we should be doing differently? Is there some kind of tool or technology that maybe we can deploy to make it easier? So he's been a really good partner for us as Surety HR in general. So we're happy to have him here today, as well as continuing to help us with our job site safety. I always like to talk about the state of the economy, the state of the companies. Last year when we had this meeting, post-pandemic, we were in that recovery, and supply chain was crazy, and demand and workforce was something that every company was dealing with, and I think still is dealing with kind of the reverberations of that. But we had a great 2022, but I think I told you in 2022 that we were mostly sold out by the time we had this meeting, and we'd probably be sold out before we finished the year for this year, which ended up being almost exactly true. The demand has continued to be very, very strong for construction, specifically commercial construction. It depends what division we're talking about in terms of sellout. But like on the production roofing division, we have a 42.5-week backlog. There aren't 42.5 weeks of working weather left in the year. So I mean, if you start doing some of the math on what jobs we already have on book, it's going to be another very busy year, which is great. And supply chains have improved, so we're able to manage our jobs in terms of getting materials and equipment to there better, and hopefully a little bit more efficiently, because the last 2 years have been horribly inefficient. Total roofing, last year we actually let me stay here for a second. CBR, 22 we had our strongest backlog, 23 is actually even better. Going into this year with about half the year already sold. I don't think we had 3 months of backlog previously in any summer. So it's probably twice as good as any year we've had. Dean and Carson continue to do a great job in the office, selling and preparing. We had some transition in the shop with TJ and Charlie taking charge of the warehouse. They both done a great job stepping up and contributing to the job success. I want to thank all those guys, as well as obviously all the people in the field. But at the professionalism in the field, it's opened so many doors for our clients. We have the benefit with CBR kind of being young, and Warren Roofing being an older company. We're able to introduce clients to each other, depending on who gets their foot in the door first. But the professionalism that we had with CBR has opened a lot of doors for Warren, which wasn't really what we expected. We expected it to go the other way, where Warren's relationships would open doors for CBR, which absolutely has happened. But it's been because of the professionalism, because of the way our people come onto the jobs and operate, the owners are happy to find other ways for us to be involved. So if it's masonry that got us initially connected, roofing, sheet metal, maintenance is what's expanding their use of our services. And I guess I appreciate everything CPR and the companies have done with that professionalism, allowing us to have repeat customers and to continue to grow our client base. And a lot of it's because it's like what we're doing today and prioritizing safety. So thank you for that. Surety HR, that was another big change we made last year. Nothing's changing this year. But you guys are obviously now getting your paychecks through Surety. They're going through their portal. Hopefully that's working well for you. I haven't heard any negatives. I imagine when you go to refinance a home or whatever, you're planning help logging in. No problem. I know Nicole and Debbie or Sherry, AJ, or Lucy can help depending on which company you work for. But it's been a great partnership with Surety HR. Derek's with Surety as well, right? So there's a lot of synergies having them being our partner. I appreciate that relationship with them. Training. We spent a lot of time training. Obviously today we're training, right? We're talking about safety. I know the JATC programs have put out or are putting out their curriculum for the year. Pay attention. There's a lot of good opportunities for either continuing your education or the refresher courses you need. And some of those initial trainings are significant compared to keeping them current with those refreshers. CERTA, ICRA, CPR, first aid, asbestos. These are a lot of the trainings we're doing year-round. We'll continue to notify you through the mail and email and through the foreman about those trainings, but also realize those same opportunities are coming through the union hall, and keep an eye out for those as well. I know one, because I sit on the JTC for the roofers, we're revamping what we're doing with the training and kind of leveling up. I'd say trying to catch up with the tenders in terms of maybe how well their program does run. Todd, you still sit on that board? I got to sit on that board with Todd for a little while, and it was interesting to see how forward-thinking the tenders are in their training and process. And I think the other trades in general are playing a little bit of catch-up, but we're seeing them make gains. And Joe Knapp, losing him last year. For those who don't know, Joe Knapp was one of our service foremen for many years. He took the job to be our new JTC director for the roofers. So it was kind of a loss for more roofing, but it was a huge leveling up for the roofing JTC program. So I'm really happy. It's always hard to lose a team member, but knowing that they're going to go and add value to the overall industry, I'm happy that we'll get to take our share of that benefit. So please keep an eye out for that. One of the biggest changes in 2023 isn't anything that we're driving, no pun intended, but it's regards to cell phones when driving. So if you aren't aware, the laws have changed. It is now a ticketable offense, a primary offense, the reason to pull you over, points on your license, and all those nasty things. I know all of us probably have seen people that aren't even aware that they're driving because they're so focused on whatever in their hand is going on, whether it's a text from somebody or I don't even know what they're doing, but it's probably long overdue. I think the law enforcement's been waiting for this to really start to punish people that are distracted while driving. So our policy's been for many years, no talking or no texting while you're driving. It's going to be really important, not just in company hours on company time, but this is going to be an easy way for people to get in trouble with the law and potentially lose driving privileges just by having this in your hand. You don't even have to be using it. If it's in your hand, you're fine. So don't use it. Kind of the last thing, and then I'll turn it over, with regards to PPE, personal protective equipment. Last year, I think our fall protection speaker really kind of opened our eyes, explained some things that maybe we understood, but maybe not as well as we thought. But I think we got a lot out of it. We made some changes immediately as a result of that meeting last year. But I want to just explain some of the things so, one, you're aware of it if we haven't addressed it with you, and two, if you're interested to work with Nicole or your supervisor. But those ergonomic harnesses, I know we got a couple of them, and we demoed them. Everyone seemed to like them. I know we just ordered dozen or something like that for the mill because they require us to be full-time harness. So when we're at the mill, we're going to have those. I know some of our service guys have been there, it seems like, for the last year, never ending. But so we're getting some of those ergonomic harnesses specifically for the mill. They're very expensive. They're like 3 times as much as the standard harness kit, not just the harness. So the Eco harness costs $300 or $400. The kit we buy, it includes the tie-off points, the road grabs, the whole setup is like $100, right? So it's a significant difference in cost. We want you guys to have what makes the most sense, and what I guess we've come up with is, kind of like we did with knee pads and some of the other better personal protection equipment. If it's something you want, if maybe you have lower back pain and having that retractable one is bothering you, what we don't want to do is we're required to get you a PPE, right? So we need to issue it. But we can get you the cheap stuff that may not be great. But if we get the expensive stuff, we need you to have some buy-in to take care of it, all right? So it's not every year you're asking for new ones. So what we came up with was we'll cover all but $100 of that ergonomic harness. So if that's something you're interested in, you contribute $100 to it. It'll be yours. It'll be issued to you. The company will pick up the difference, but that way there's a little bit of ownership of the equipment. You take care of it, and hopefully it lasts. I think they're rated for like 5 years typically. So it's an inexpensive investment if you think it's going to help you. $20 a year. The other thing that we did, and I know we caught one of them since our meeting. I hope that we've gotten them all out of service except where we're explicitly allowed to use them. We removed all of our 6-foot lanyards, and I don't know if you guys recall, but when we were talking about the fall height calculation and the 16.5 feet, you basically have to be in a 2-story building to use fall protection unless you're using fall restraint. So one of the things we did was we eliminated the 6-foot lanyards. We do still have them to issue when we need them. So like at the mill, there's certain situations where we need 6-footers for transversing across the long roof and that 100% tie-off. So there are very specific times when we will issue them and then retrieve them from the job, but nobody should be having those in their truck at this point. Again, if you're at the mill perpetually, that might be the only exception. But everyone should have gotten a 3-foot lanyard issued to them last year. If you have not, make sure you let your supervisor know and we'll get those switched out. Another kind of industry change, this has been happening, but the side impact helmets that I don't think everyone loves the look of. They look more like a rock climbing helmet than a traditional hard hat. We bought the cast ones that Higley and Turner and Devane basically said, you have to buy these. And apologies, I think they're roughly $180 a hard hat versus $12 for the traditional one, right? Huge difference in price. They're much, much nicer. And of those of you that have had one issued, you might have first said, it looks funny, but probably after wearing it, you're like, hey, this thing is way nicer than the legacy technology. But what's happened over the last couple of years is these major companies have mandated the evolution. Some of the other hard hat makers have now made their equivalent. And so we now, I think we just put an order in for another 50 of them. We now have more traditional looking hard hats that have the side impact rating. Of course, they're going to have a chin strap to get that side impact rating. But I think they're going to be more accepted in terms of how they look in the field. So we're going to have those rolling out throughout the course of this year. And as we give you hard hats, just realize that's going to be the one you get. But we're glad to see that. The cost, now that they're kind of more mainstream, they went from really silly prices to, I know they're more than what we were paying, but they're more affordable. So I'm glad to see that. It's a nice evolution. It's like any technology, when it comes out, it's expensive. As time goes by, it's more approachable. The other one, obviously, we talked about at the very beginning, but with the boots, I hope everybody likes them. I've gotten some feedback. We had a couple guys get fitted yesterday in the office and warehouse trying to reduce the number of people that had to go through the van today. But it seems like they have nice quality stuff, so I hope you're able to get those. I recognize that they are able to issue them to you today, that they'll get them ordered, and we'll get them to you, I think, within a week or two. But I'm really appreciative for Nicole. If you weren't here when I said thank you to you, but you can watch the video. Thank you. But Nicole, that was, I think, her idea to do the boots, organize it all. It was a great idea. I think it's a really nice gift. It's something hopefully you all can benefit from having. A new pair of boots that'll keep your feet safe, dry, warm for the season. Before I turn it over, anyone have any questions for me? Awesome. Nicole's going to talk next about our accident protocol. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Today is how to handle them if one does occur. So, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that injury and illness rates are about 24% higher in construction industries than on average across all other industries. So, if you yourself or someone on your crew experiences an injury, it's very important for you to let us know. Now, on the other side of that, 25% of construction workers report that they have failed to report a work-related injury. So, if we aren't made aware of the injury when it happens, we can't make the necessary changes so we can continue to improve. Now, say you slip going up a ladder and you don't fall, you don't hurt yourself, that still needs to be reported to us as a near-miss accident. Those are ways that we can still continue to improve and make sure that your work environment is safe. So, first things first, your foreman on the job site needs to be made aware when a workplace injury does happen. They are first aid and CPR trained, so they will be able to give the best first response. If the injury is serious, you'll need to call 911. And if you're at a big job site like the mill or NASA, or Ford, you need to call security because they will let emergency services know where they can best locate you. Some things we need to keep in mind. Hospital emergency rooms, those are for life-threatening injuries, and occupational health facilities, and urgent cares, those are for non-life-threatening emergencies. So your foreman will ensure that the injured worker is transported to the proper medical facility. And they will also give you an injury packet. Now this card that I have up here, this is the most important piece of paper that needs to go with the doctor. But each person that I go through, or that I explain today, plays a very key role in something like a workplace injury happens. So you're going to hear me reference the safety team. And if you've heard Trevor mention it, the safety team consists of safety personnel. So that's myself, that's your superintendents, your foremen, your project managers, and the presidents. So what we're here to do is to make sure that we're helping the injured worker and the foreman to navigate this process. And that's why it's very important for us to be notified immediately. If we are made aware immediately, we can also let surety HR know, so that that card and your claim gets processed correctly. But we also help you by making sure that we find the closest medical facility. We also help by collecting statements from all of the witnesses, your supervisor, and the injured worker, so that we get a clear picture of how this can happen, and then we can start making changes to prevent it from happening in the future. We work with your physicians and your medical officers and your claims managers. This is so that we make sure that you have the proper care, and also to make sure that when you're working with all these people, it can be very overwhelming, so I want you guys to know that the safety team is here to help. The foreman will also plays a key role, aside from making sure that you have first aid if you need it, or giving you a ride to the nearest medical facility. And making sure that you have a packet. They do fill out their own statement to let us know what they have seen or if they haven't seen it, to get a clear picture from their crew of what happened. And they can also make sure that the witnesses fill out their statements. They let us know immediately. And this paperwork and phone calls, all of this will come as a second priority, just like to the injured worker, will come as a second priority to medical attention. That always needs to stay first priority. So in your injury packet, there's going to be a couple loose forms, one of which the foreman will fill out, two of which, if there's witnesses, they'll fill out. And then there's also a staple part that the employee will fill out. It's highlighted, it says employee for you to easily find. And then there's also a staple part that goes to the physician, and that's also highlighted so that you know who gets what. So even though the injured worker has responsibilities, in addition, there's a couple other things that they need to keep in mind. Within 32 hours of your workplace injury happening, you have to submit to a drug screen. And if you're medically able to, where do you think that person is supposed to report the next day? Do you think they're supposed to go to work the next day and not act like anything happened? Does anybody know where they're supposed to go the next day? To the office. Thank you guys. And this is so that we can all be on the same page. We're going to communicate about what happened. We're going to make sure that the paperwork's filled out, and we're going to make sure that we know the next steps going forward. So while you're undergoing treatment, your physician is going to determine what physical capabilities you have. If, say, they only let you lift up to 10 pounds, you can only kneel for a certain part of the day, they'll let us know that by filling out a form called the Medco 14, and this lets us know as your employer what work we can offer to you to help you in your recovery time. So we offer a lot of different options, but it's very important for you to let your physician know that we can accommodate these restrictions. So we keep you working while you are recovering, and this lets you earn your benefits, but also earn your wages. So if you're not able to do one of these alternatives to your original work, then you can only receive about 60% of your wages, and you won't be able to pay into or earn your benefit credits. So we have several ways to keep you working. One of them could be a ground guy on the job, and all of these are dependent on what your physical capabilities are. But you can work on the ground, we could have you driving, you could help on in the office if it's sedentary work. And I know that all of us work together to prevent workplace injuries from happening in the first place by working mindfully and safely. But we want you to know that there are steps that are imperative so that you know what to do when it happens. So us as the safety team and all of you need to work together on this process, and that's what we are working towards today. So thank you very much.
Most of you guys know me, some of you don't. I work with Surety HR, so once people find that out, they like to ask me payroll questions that I can't answer. So I do the safety inspections for you guys now. I have been for about the past year. It's been kind of a learning experience for me. I've been in the construction industry for about 12, 13 years now. Roofing is not something I was doing for a very long time in terms of safety, but it's something that I have always looked forward to doing, and you guys have taught me a lot in terms of new things that I've been seeing every single time I'm out on the workplace. So I want to talk to you guys about a few things that I have had questions arise over the last year in terms of OSHA, also looking at some fire safety stuff, as well as heat stress, since we are approaching the spring and summer months again. And then I have housekeeping up there, kind of ties in with the fire safety. So, all right, we have had a few situations where OSHA shows up to one of your guys' job sites. What the hell do you do? Nobody really ever knows, right? It's scary, it's a government official, right? It's intimidating. I know my first couple times I dealt with OSHA, it's kind of scary, right? So, what is OSHA? Well, OSHA is a government body that was formed in 1970, and they're there to enforce safety standards. Now, why do they show up? Well, there's multiple different reasons, but these are the top ones that are listed on their website. Imminent danger. So that's like if something happens at a workplace where, let's say something collapses, something blows up, any of those kind of things where a 911 call is made and OSHA gets notified, that's imminent danger. Severe injury or illness, somebody gets severely injured or there's a fatality that occurs, usually within 8 hours OSHA has to be contacted and then they'll show up to the job site. Complaints, these are employee complaints. Referrals, so this could be from another government body, it could be from a contractor, it could be from a general contractor, it could be any of that type of thing. Targeted inspections are a little bit more rare. These are ones that kind of target certain industries and also higher injury rates. So if a company has a high EMR or a high injury rate from the previous year, they can be on a targeted inspection list. Follow-up inspections, so this is where maybe they came out for one of those first 4 or 5 days previously mentioned, and they want to follow up with another inspection. And then the one that oddly has affected Warren once in the past year, and I have never dealt with in my 13 years of doing this, was a drive-by. And this is when literally an OSHA officer is driving by and sees something, and they say, huh, that's unique. These are not common whatsoever, okay? But there are some important things I want to dive into here in a second as to if an OSHA officer actually shows up and one of these drive-bys happen, and what you guys should be doing with it. So, is OSHA good or bad? This is hard for me to say, right? My job is to make sure to keep you guys safe. So is OSHA's, right? Well, everybody has a job, and one of OSHA's jobs is to make sure that they bring in income, right? Everybody has to bring in income for their business. OSHA's business is the government, so they want to make sure that they are bringing in money for the government. If they don't bring in money, they don't have jobs, okay? So, it is a good thing that they're enforcing standards, however, they can be sly and they can do things that, well, let's be honest, aren't that great. So what are we going to dive into here today? OSHA showed up, what should I do? Well, the first step is always to have the OSHA officer wait wherever they arrive, okay? So if we're at a job site where there's multiple contractors, more than likely they're going to show up to the entrance of the trailer and wait there. They're going to say, I am here for Warren Roofing, I'm here for Total Roofing, I'm here for CBR, whatever company they are there for. Now, if they are not there for your division that you work in, they're not going to come inspect you unless there's another reason. However, most of the time they're going to show up, they're going to say who they're there for, and wait. Now, under federal law, you can't have an OSHA officer wait for a reasonable amount of time. That amount of reasonable time is not defined anywhere. However, it is kind of agreed upon that it's 60 to 90 minutes. They can sit there and wait, and at that point in time, they either move forward with their inspection, or the general contractor or project manager can ask for a warrant. That is a big no-no. We don't like doing that because it just kind of makes them mad. All right? So I'm a foreman, what do I do? Well, the first thing you should do is, when that OSHA officer shows up and comes and talks to you, is ask for the officer's name, their ID number, or their badge, because they are a federal agent. They should be carrying some type of identification with them, and the reason for their visit. They should state why they're there. They should state, because I'm here because yesterday you had a severe injury. I'm here because yesterday an employee filed a complaint. I'm here because I was driving by and I saw something interesting. Now, I want to go over one of the drive-bys that happened last year and what triggered it and what came of it. So, an OSHA officer was driving by one of your guys' projects and he saw one of the chutes coming down from the roofs. And at that time, the chute had been jammed or was just being moved. I can't remember either or. But neither here nor there, the officer was driving by and he saw a couple Warren employees adjusting it. And that OSHA officer has never seen a roofing project before, has never seen a chute before. He had no idea what the guys were doing. So he stopped, watched, and then I think about an hour later he came up onto the roof to speak to the foreman. It was handled well, nothing came of it, there was nothing done that was wrong. However, that is usually how they happen. They see something, they go back to their vehicle, they call their office and say, hey, I saw something, I'm not sure what the heck it was that I just saw, but I'm going to go talk to the project manager. Now, once they show you their credentials, what they're there for, this is the point where the clock starts ticking and you have that time, that window of time, where you can say, all right, I need to call this person, and this person. So what's the next step? The next step is to call your safety manager. Okay, so that's Nicole. You want to make sure you call Nicole right away. After you call Nicole, call your superintendent or project manager and inform them as well. Okay? And once this is done, call me. So you have 3 people you have to call. You have to call Nicole first, and then call your project manager or superintendent, whoever that may be, and then call me. Most of the time, I'm in the area. You guys know I'm out on anywhere from 6 to 8 of your job sites a week. If I'm in the area, I will come assist. We have 3 other people, I have 3 other colleagues who do this every single day of the week as well. So if I can't make it out there, one of them will, just to help represent you guys. Alright, so continuing on, once everyone has been contacted, the union representative should also be found. So there are union representatives. Now that union rep can be the foreman on the job. As long as they are part of that union, they can be part as the union representative as well. And at that time, they should have them present with the OSHA officer and foreman. Because this is when what we call an opening conference starts. All right, and this is when OSHA kind of sits down, goes to the job trailer, and goes over all the paperwork as to why they are there. OSHA will wait a reasonable amount of time again, and the OSHA Field Operations Manual states that the delay of 1 hour is normal. If you go beyond this, they're either going to, again, approach the job site, or you have to ask for a warrant. We do not want to do that ever. All right? So, a lot of questions I get is, do we stop working? Should we go run and hide? Should we take lunch? Should we go on break? Absolutely not. Okay? I cannot stress this to you guys enough that doing this will raise every red flag in OSHA's book. Okay? One of the worst things you can do is go run and hide, go take lunch. It's just, they had 13 employees on the roof, and magically, now that I show up, nobody's working, or they're on break for the rest of the day. What's going on? They don't want me to see something. That's exactly what's running through their head. They do not want to see something, all right? So, one of the things I like to stress to everybody is PPE. Everyone should always be wearing PPE. I rarely, ever have an issue with any of you guys not having the proper PPE on when I come out on job sites. But this is a good time to check yourself. Do I have my glasses on? Do I have my boots on? Do I have the proper gloves on? Do I have high vis on? Do I need a hard hat right now, or is it only down when I'm on the ground? Do I need to have that bars on? What kind of other things are needed to be worn? Okay. Another big thing is fall protection. They always like to look at fall protection. If you guys are having an inspection happen and you're there working, make sure your fall protection is in check. OSHA officers do not have any special privileges. I cannot stress this to you guys enough. I have been out on inspections that have gotten thrown out the window and absolutely zeroed out, no fines, nothing, because an OSHA officer will get up onto a completely exposed roof with no fall protection, walk around, and we get multiple images and complaints saying, well, why do I have to wear fall protection when the OSHA officer doesn't? They do, okay? They are 100% just as should be held accountable as you guys are, okay? So, it's the foreman's job to make sure that they're supplied with fall protection if need be. They should also be wearing all the same PPE as you guys, all right? They are not special in that sense. Comply with the requests that they ask for, okay? Some OSHA officers like to trip up employers. That's plain and simple. I have seen it 100 times over. The best thing to do when having to answer a question that you're not sure of is say, I'll get back to you. I'll email that to you later. Or let me call my safety manager. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that answer. It's better to give them a "I'll get back to you later" rather than "I don't know," or even worse, the wrong answer. There's been situations, and Nicole and I were just talking about this the other day, where an OSHA officer shows up, and instead of asking the foreman something, they'll ask an employee something. And the employee, it was their first day on the job, and they completely answered the questions wrong, and they ended up getting into a deeper investigation for a bunch of stuff that didn't matter, and it tied up the job site for weeks on it. So, if you don't know the answer to the question, just say "I don't know," and say "Let me get back to you about that." Most officers are not going to shut down job sites, and this is what I was kind of just tying into, but it can be detrimental when they do. So comply with them. Don't give them too much of a hard time. They're doing their job just as much as you guys are, but at some point in time, they will move on unless there's something severely wrong with the job site. So what else? OSHA officers will have a specific area or issue to inspect. This means that if they're there because somebody lost a finger on a saw, more than likely they're going to want to see the operation of the saw, what saw that caused the loss of the finger, what they were cutting, what area they were cutting it in. They have a specific path that they're supposed to follow. Now, they can dive into other things if they see you guys doing things unsafely. But once again, this is my reminder to you guys, if you know OSHA's there, check yourself. Make sure you're doing everything properly before they start tearing through the job site. The foreman and union rep should accompany OSHA at all times. Never let an OSHA officer just wander your guys' job site. Again, if they see something, they're allowed to go inspect it. You guys should keep them on a straight path to where they're supposed to be. Take notes, all right? So if you're the union rep or the foreman, and you're walking around with this OSHA officer, take notes of what they're saying, okay? If they take a picture, you get your phone out and take a picture of the exact same thing that they just took a picture of. Not volunteer any information. Simple as that. If they ask you a question, answer it, keep it at that. Don't try and BS with them and make good conversation and ask them how their weekend was and what type of fish they caught when they went on their fishing trip, because they don't care. They're not there to be your friend. If possible, fix any violation that they point out, all right? So a good example of this is if they walk over to check your fire extinguishers and they are not up to date for your monthly inspections, inspect them, write your name on, initial them like you guys always do, and clear it out. They will not fine you for something like that if you correct it immediately in front of them. All right, next subject, heat stress. We are moving into the warmer months. I know you guys know how to usually deal with this stuff, but this is going to be a targeted area for OSHA this year, so we wanted to make sure that we cover it with you guys. Everybody in this room probably knows what heat stress is, okay? But there are some things that can occur with heat stress that maybe you guys aren't familiar with, all right? So heat stress occurs when the body can't get rid of excess heat. Everybody knows in here probably that you sweat because your body is trying to cool itself down. Eventually, if you're dehydrated, you'll run out of sweat to cool yourself down. So if not addressed quickly, heat stress can result in heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat rashes. So the first two things are heat rashes and heat cramps that I want to talk to you guys about, because this is the number one sign that starts to show before heat exhaustion and heat stroke happen, all right? This is what heat rash looks like. It just kind of looks like a red, blistery rash. Usually occurs in high friction areas or high sweat areas, waistband, armpits, inside your elbows, inside the back of the knees, those areas, you guys will see that. Heat cramps are obviously cramps, and they occur because of the dehydration, and they're usually pretty painful. If you guys have ever suffered a cramp in sports or playing football on the weekend with your friends, whatever it may be, it's a little bit different. Heat cramps are usually a little bit more painful. And they really only occur in the abdomen. So what is heat exhaustion? So you got heat rash, you got heat cramps coming on, you completely ignore them, you just carry on through your day. This is when heat exhaustion can start to sit in if you do not address those problems before. The signs are dizziness and fainting, that's pretty common, excessive sweating, rapid and weak pulse, and these are the two things I really want to highlight, the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Heat exhaustion, you'll have cool, pale, clammy skin. Okay, so that clamminess where your hands feel cold, they get a little sweaty, and muscle cramps start to sit in. All right. Now there's a little bit of a difference once you move on to heat stroke and heat exhaustion. I'll go over that here in a minute. Well, what do we do if you are suffering from heat exhaustion? Move the person to shade or a cold room, okay? If there's a job site trailer or the foreman's truck, if you can start it up and turn the AC on full blast, or if you can get them into a shade and you have a portable fan, whatever it may be, get them into a shaded or cooler area from where they are working from. If available, go grab a cold water out of the cooler, if you guys have one on the job site, and douse some rags. You can put those rags on the back of the neck, on the chest, on the forehead. This will help cool the person down. Have them drink chilled water, not ice cold, not chunks of ice, anything like that. You don't want to do that, it can shock the system. So just chilled water or a low sugar sports drink. Gatorade's good. Get those electrolytes back in their system. But if at any point the person loses consciousness, call 911. All right, you ignored everything I just said, and now you're even in worse condition. This is when heat stroke is the same thing. Okay, heat stroke is a little bit different, and it does have some serious side effects. Heat stroke is what occurs when the heat exhaustion is not treated. Heat stroke has zero sweating. All right, your body is completely dried out. You have no liquids left. Your body cannot self-cool. At this point, your skin is no longer clammy, it's no longer sweaty, it's no longer pale or cool to the touch. It is getting red, hot, and your skin is dry. Okay? They will lose consciousness at some point, more than likely, if not treated. And at this point in time, once your body starts shutting down, you can have seizures. Even if you have no history of seizures before, I've seen it happen. I've been on a couple jobs where a person had a heat stroke, and it's almost inevitable that the person has seizures. Call 911 immediately. Do not hesitate. If you see a person passing out or having seizures from this, call 911 immediately. Move the person again to shade, a cool job site trailer, the foreman's truck with AC on full blast, whatever you can do. Again, cold water rags are really good. You don't want to shock their body by taking like ice packs or filling up a bag of ice and just sticking it on the back of their neck or their forehead. So I like to say cool rags instead because they usually will warm up a little bit quicker than an ice pack would help. Attempt to have them drink water. Not ice cold, not chilled, just water. Okay? Even it sounds silly, but warm water is better than cold water or ice cold water or chilled water because you need to rehydrate their system, not shock it. All right? Slow, small amounts. You also don't want to shock their system by filling up their belly with water. Okay? Talk to the person. Just keep them talking. If they are conscious, it's good to keep talking to them. Once 911 has been called, you're taking care of the person. You can have, if there's more than you and just that person there, have another employee call the safety manager, the superintendent or project manager to inform them of what's going on. It styles back to what Nicole was just talking about with injury reporting, okay? You guys know this, but I need to preach it to you guys because a lot of people are hard-headed. I know I am. I get outside working in my yard, or I'm doing side work at my wife's company on the weekends, and I just ignore it. But it's important to drink water, guys. I cannot stress this to you guys enough. Get a big water bottle. Take a cooler with you every single day. If you guys are going to drink Gatorade, Powerade, whatever your favorite sports drink is, that's fine. Balance it out with water. Electrolytes are good. There are a lot of sugars in those Powerade and Gatorade drinks. Make sure you're balancing out with water. Avoid caffeine. I know it's hard. I'm a huge coffee drinker. If you guys ever see me in the mornings, I usually have a large coffee in my hand at your job sites. I get it. But pounding Ghost energy drinks and Bangs and Monsters throughout the day is not good when we're in 92-degree heat. Caffeine is actually a larger dehydrator than alcohol is, so in large amounts. But just keep that in mind. Throw some towels or rags in the cooler. If you guys have a job site cooler or you have your own personal cooler, take 2 rags, throw them in the cooler with your ice packs. Again, this reverts back to that heat exhaustion and heat stress. They're good to use. Wear light, non-tight fitting clothing. Okay. Obviously, you guys know not to wear heavy hoodies and stuff like that in the summertime. But just keep it in mind wearing looser clothing in the summertime. Also, any type of moisture wicking clothing is really good if you own it. If there's a shaded area, kind of designate that area for a cool down spot. During your breaks, don't stay on the roof in the direct sun. If you get down for your breaks and your lunch, go sit in a shaded, cool area. If a shaded area is not found on this job site, pop-up tents can be provided for heat relief. All right, so this is something that I believe Nicole and Trevor want to put into place for this summer, and we're going to be doing it. So pop-up tents will be available when there's no shade available from trees, overhangs, things like that for you guys to rest in. We want to make sure you guys are cooling down on your breaks and lunch. All right, and avoid areas of direct sunlight and things that can absorb heat. Obviously, just don't go plant your butt on an asphalt parking lot during your lunch for 30 minutes or whatever. Avoid heat and heat absorbing materials during your breaks. All right, last section, fire safety. You guys know about fire safety. A lot of you guys are really good about it, but there's a couple things I want to go over with you guys that are sort of new, and then a couple reminders that I have seen out on job sites that A, I want to compliment the guys who are doing this, and B, I want the people who are not doing this yet to kind of look at the examples that I have on, I think, the second and third next slide. So what are the new requirements? All job sites must have a fire extinguisher present in the work area if there's a fire hazard. All right. So if you guys have had me out on your job sites in the last month and a half, I've been kind of talking to some of the foremen about this, saying, "Hey, where's your fire extinguisher?" Say, "I don't need one." I say, "Okay, you have a flammable right there." Or, "Hey, I don't need one. I'm just using a grinder. That's a fire hazard." Or, "Hey, I'm just using a bandsaw. That's a fire hazard." Okay. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a second. All vehicles storing flammables have to have a fire extinguisher. Okay. So, if you are going to have flammables stored in your truck, and you're going to have flammable material, or you're doing a fire hazard on the roof, you have to have 2 separate fire extinguishers. Okay. So, when are they to be used? This is for all divisions. All right. Warm roofing, total roofing, CBR, sheet metal. Everybody in this room, this applies to. Okay. So, what is a flammable hazard? It could be primer. It could be any other type of flammable liquid. It could be gasoline, it could be brazing, cutting, grinding. Those are all fire hazards, okay? You guys don't see I'm not mentioning torching because I think that's an obvious thing that you guys know fire extinguishers have to be present, all right? Fire extinguishers are provided by a general contractor, okay? You're on a big job site, they have a bunch of fire extinguishers. You guys are getting there for setup that day. Additional ones do not need to be brought in. Okay, so I know I was just out on a job, I think a month ago, over at MGM, and they finally moved inside the smoker's patio, and they're working in there, and the general contractors have provided fire extinguishers throughout that whole job site area. That's fine, but if you guys are on setup that day, just take a quick walk around and make sure all the fire extinguishers are good. Foreman or send an employee to do it, doesn't matter, but just make sure that they're all up to date and inspected. If they're not, that's when you should be bringing in your own extinguisher, okay? But if they're good, and you guys have multiple available on the site provided by the GC, there's no reason to be lugging around extra extinguishers, okay? With the above, again, the extinguishers should be up to date on both monthly and annual inspections. So what if we don't have enough fire extinguishers? What if I only brought one, and I have flammable liquids in my truck, and I'm also grinding something on the roof, okay? At that point in time, you should contact the warehouse manager to have additional fire extinguisher or extinguishers brought out to the job site. Torching safety reminders. So when a torch system is being used, that is, I misspelled that, or I miswrote that. When a torching system is being used, that's fine. You can have those torches on, you gotta have gas on. Obviously, you need it to work. When they are not being used, they're not to be left unattended on. Okay, so this means turning off your torch and turning off your gas. You guys are going on break, you guys are going on lunch, those should not be left on. I have not seen that in any of the divisions that I've gone on to inspections. I have seen it at another company, and that's why I'm including this in the presentation. Slip-ups happen. I just want to remind you guys, if you're walking away for any type of reason, that torch needs to be turned off and the gas needs to be turned off as well. Gas supply should be on the same level as the torching, okay? So if you're on the 3rd or 4th level of the building, that tank needs to be on the same level that you guys are working at, all right? Fire extinguishers should be placed throughout the job site. as seen at a number of job sites, and I want to highlight this one right here. This is Mayfield Aquatic that you guys are on right now. A good rule of thumb is a extinguisher for every torch for every cylinder that you guys have on that job site. And the only reason is because if you have, I think it's hard to see, there's 5 extinguishers in this picture. There's 5 torches. That means probably there's going to be 5 people running torches. So it's good to have an extinguisher per torch or per person up there. Extinguishers should be inspected the first of every month. Okay, you guys know I'm on you guys about this. Obviously, if the first falls on a day that you guys are off because of weather or it's a weekend, whenever your next job is, make sure you guys are inspecting your extinguishers. Gas cylinder storage. So when torching is taking place, gas cylinders are present. Storage of these cylinders is imperative for safe job sites. This does not really affect anybody in their head until they see a cylinder take off. And I have seen a cylinder take off, and it is not pretty. It can do a lot of damage and kill somebody. So every cylinder must be stored in its own upright cart with the safety chains in place. If your safety chains break, make sure you tell somebody. Okay? These need to be replaced immediately. When cylinders are not in use, so when you guys are leaving for the day, they should be stored back in their cage. And that cage should have a latch on it. You should put that latch on. If you were able to lock it, lock it. Question? I
had one.
Okay, cool.
You mentioned with the ocean inspector
Yeah.
on the roof that we have to give them the proper PPE.
Yep.
So are we supposed to have an extra spare harness just in case or whatever else?
Yeah, so that is something I was going to talk to the office about, is having a spare harness available on those bigger job sites.
It's a great reason why we need an hour to get supervisors there, because they may not have the fall protection they need to go up by that elevated work level. And so that's a reasonable reason to have them wait.
Yep.
You know, so I don't know if we want to leave them there, but in certain situations, maybe we will.
I don't ever remember hearing that. That's what they asked.
Yeah, so it's not something that's widely published because they don't want people to know about it. I know that sounds terrible, but by law, you have to give the employer a reasonable amount of time. And like I said, that reasonable amount of time isn't defined. It depends on also what side of the bed the OSHA officer woke up on that morning, whatever they want to define reasonable amount of time is. So, yeah, like Trevor said, I think it's a good opportunity for that foreman to call into the warehouse and make sure that, you know, the proper PPE is brought out.
You have 2 things that are going on uniquely in Cleveland right now. A lot of young OSHA inspectors that haven't seen roofing, right, or a chute, that was your example. So they may not have been trained yet to go on the roof, meaning they're not allowed to actually go on the roof. So for the last couple of years, we haven't seen a lot of OSHA. That's because either the pandemic or their training has inhibited their ability. Well, what's happened over the last 2 years? They've been hiring and training.
400%. Their hiring rate over the last 24 months has been 400%.
So we are going to start seeing them. I think we've had 10 years of large absence. I mean, really, they've been absent from our workplaces, where prior to that, they were much more present. I think we should expect that this year moving forward. Obviously, you have a Republican president like Trump that's defunding the EPA and OSHA and everything else. Very different than Biden, who's investing in growing those things, right? So like, that's real, right? That's actually happening. We're going to see that. The other thing that I think, to your point, John, about the harnesses, they may not be comfortable or able to go on the roof. Again, that's what's going to happen in the trailer. We're going to figure out where they need to go. Hey, I saw that chute. It looked like it was unprotected fall hazard. I want to see it. It may take a little effort to get the guy up there or gal up there to see it, but that's what we're going to have to do. And so, do any of the superintendents keep an extra harness in their job, in their truck? Yeah. So, I mean, and that's typically who, when you call the office and do the daisy chain of letting everyone know, typically your superintendent's going to show up, and they would have that in their truck. I do not expect every foreman to have an extra harness in their truck, simply because you don't have enough room for the stuff you need, let alone things you hypothetically could need. So
every situation with OSHA is really unique, guys, so I just want you guys to kind of remember that. Excuse me. And like Trevor said, the hiring in OSHA right now is crazy. I had a OSHA inspection with one of my clients where the OSHA officer came out, they did an inspection, and I was not there. My client did not make me aware until the following day. And when I called that OSHA officer to follow up on some of the questions that they had for my client, the receptionist told me that the officer was in their 30 hour. And I said, oh, they're teaching it? And they're like, no, they're taking it. And I said, they're not OSHA 30 hour certified? And they said, well, no, they just started last week. And I said, and you sent them out on an inspection already? So this is what we're dealing with right now with OSHA. Just keep that in mind. You have to be patient with them and also comply because they are. So.
The other thing that Derek spent a good amount of time talking about, and it's not new, but its focus is new this year, is the heat stress and heat exhaustion. Obviously, we're doing physical work, we're doing it outside, in the heat. Be super conscious of that. You can't drink enough fluids. You can't take the breaks, in a cool enough place typically. Those tents are kind of annoying. We have, I think, 3, and we just decided to get a handful more. The service guys is who I think of first. You guys maybe bounce around. The production guys, you probably know where there's that shady spot to go take break. Or, I know some guys go and run to McDonald's and physically leave the site. So you're in your car maybe with the AC on, or we're at McDonald's where the AC is. Those are good things. But we're supposed to identify now where the shady place is. Where can you take these breaks? That's part of the standard now. And so as foremen and project managers, we need to be thinking about, if there is no good spot, we need to create one. And that's where these tents are a viable option. Again, the foreman, if you recognize, hey, we're in the middle of a sea of black asphalt, there's nowhere to hide, that's where getting these tents out is probably going to be important. The reason I don't love the tents is you're probably going to have to take them down and put them up every day so they don't blow, right? So it's great in a pinch. I honestly think we'll use them more for the service guys if they're trying to cut in a curve and it's drizzling out, they keep the water. I think that's practically how they'll get used, more so than guys huddling under them for shade. But we'll have them. If we need to buy more, we will buy more. I think the point about Gatorade is also important. Has anyone ever had heat exhaustion or heat stroke? I know I have, on the roof, and I didn't recognize it, right? It was the guy working with me that was like, dude, you're not sweating. You were sweating profusely a minute ago, you're not. So it's important to look out for your team member, because they may already be under the effects of heat stroke and not self-aware of what's happening, where you may observe it. Maybe that young apprentice that he's worried about looking like he's soft and he's literally killing himself trying to keep up. Be aware of your team members and identify that they may have an issue. Because by the time the sweating stops, it may now be we have to take them down with the fire department because they can't get off the roof anymore. So it's really important to get them down somewhere cool with fluids and cold compresses. The sooner the better. And anyone that's had it, you don't feel better in an hour or two. You feel better in a day or two. And if it's really severe, it might be a week. So it's really important the earlier you catch it, to go treat it. So that way, hopefully tomorrow you feel better. Not, maybe after the weekend I'll feel better. Derek's a great resource. I know you guys have all got to meet him. Does anyone have questions while he's here? We're a little ahead of schedule.
Whatever everything for roofers, but as a crane operator, what am I supposed to do when it shows up? What are they looking for?
So that's a unique situation. With cranes and rigging and things like that, most of the OSHA officers who come out to job sites have no idea what they're looking at. So continue normal operation unless otherwise stated is kind of the best way to go forward. I can tell you, I know of 2 OSHA officers who maybe even remotely have somewhat of a clue about cranes and rigging. So it's a similar situation with trenching and stuff like that. So continue normal operation unless otherwise told not to. I know that is a very odd thing to say. You would hear a lot of companies tell you to shut down and go to lunch and things like that. I've been doing this for 13 years and I've probably done 500 OSHA cases, and anytime you do that, it just raises every red flag.
To Dave's point, and I think this is just general, not necessarily when OSHA's coming out, being aware of the load and not being under it, that was our focus for one of our 2017 or whatever it was, our safety, no one under the load. But I know that's probably something that Dave's frustrated with on a daily basis, whether it's our people or not, but ducking under the ropes and walking right under where we're swinging. You don't want to be under the load. That's the kind of thing, if OSHA sees Dave doing everything right, he's got everything, if you're walking under the load, that's wrong. Frankly, you're not going to have enough time to react. That's why we just don't want to be in harm's way. I know the drivers or the guys loading and unloading at the ground level are kind of inevitably in the area where Dave's loading. Really important that Dave and you are making good eye contact and paying attention to what's going on so he knows you're aware. On the roof, you can't see you, right? And so being mindful of yourself that, if, is this load swinging, am I under it or not? It's important, but it's also probably the other trades. And so if you're on the ground helping with the rigging and there's other people passing through, it's your job to help Dave because he can't stop what he's doing to go yell at the guy that's ducking under the flags because it's closer to going that door he wants to go in and going maybe 100 feet out of his way to avoid being in the swing radius. And it's not hard, as Dave will tell you. I'm picking here and I'm landing there. It's pretty clear where he's traveling. And if you went the other way, it's not that big of a deal. Dave, like that, are there other things that you see that are good just to remind us about?
We're pretty good now. I usually correct it when I see him right then and there.
Well, like one of the things we bought, and I apologize, I'm going to say the last year or two, Dave and Mike got high quality walkie-talkies. Because there's so often we're in the blind, where Dave can't see the roof or the guys on the roof and having that communication. So, those are the kinds of things that you may identify something that we're not aware of, and there may be a tool like those. I think we got like police walkie-talkies. I can't believe how expensive those things were. But they work really well. Instead of getting the cheap hunting ones that don't work great for $100, we got the commercial grade that needed some special license to even buy. But they work great. So now we're on a site, Dave can be in his cab, roofer, whoever's on the roof or landing can be communicating with him. We just need to know that there's a need and then we'll invest in that. Anyone else? Derek, I really appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry, John.
What happens on a job site and another contractor or sub on site kind of has an OSHA event? We're doing everything fine, we're on the roof working. What happens if another contractor has something?
So for those who did not hear, he's asking about if you're on a GC job site and OSHA shows up for another contractor and you guys are doing everything right. So I think I may have mentioned something about this, but just to answer the question more specifically, if they are there for John Bob's towing and not Warren Roofing, they're not going to dive into Warren Roofing unless they see something unsafe. When they are on a schedule and they are there for a specific task or reason or company, that's who they're going to inspect. I have seen it happen maybe once or twice where they start tearing into the other contractors, but they were doing unsafe acts. So it's usually targeted for that one specific task again, or that contractor.
I was thinking more along the lines, what if there's like an accident on the job site and they're going to be there in an hour, something like that, like a piece of equipment falls over or something like that.
They're still,
same thing.
Yep, same thing. So if the piece of equipment was owned by that towing company, that's who they're going to be targeting.
John, and further to your point, what we're doing in terms of activities, it's typical that we wouldn't be able to leave and just come back the next day because we leave the building unsecured or in an unsafe situation. And I think that gets to it as much as the flag. We still have a duty to our customer and to the owner to do whatever it is that they hired us to do, and do it professionally and safely. And so if we're doing it the right way, which I think day in and day out we are, we shouldn't be afraid of OSHA. Frankly, we've brought OSHA out in the last couple of years to audit us at our request to say, what do you see that we could do better? Not to come out and write tickets, right? There is our partner in that situation. But where are we doing good, we understand, but where we might be falling short. So like one of the best examples I have, we switched insurance companies at one point, and they're like, hey, your perimeter of your roof and the roof in general, you guys get that. Like you have all these protocols, you have all this training, all this equipment, you're doing a good job. The things that they were worried about were guys falling through a hole in the roof, like a skylight, or opening of the deck that maybe the contractor cut to put a new unit, and the trucks. The driving. Two things that were really exposed to a lot of things outside of our control. So it shifted our focus having not had that loss prevention guy, kind of like an OSHA or BWC inspector over here, having not had the opportunity to have a third party assess us and say, really good over here, area of attention needed over there. So like now we're doing, you know, all the guys that drive in the yard know we're doing pre-trip inspections. We're actually looking at the trucks. Is it in good, safe working order? Is the load strapped down? Things that 10 years ago, we didn't even contemplate. We didn't even think of that as a thing to do. OSHA should be looking to help us make our workplaces safer, right? That's their directive. Unfortunately, they're the cop that has to write tickets at the same time. So it's, you know, the revenue aspect that you can't ignore, but at the core, they're actually there to make the job safer. So they shouldn't be perceived as our enemy, but they're certainly not our friend when they show up. That's a reasonable explanation.
Sure. Can we ask them to turn off recording devices? They show up on the job?
So he asked if we should ask them to turn off recording devices if they show up on a job. Most OSHA officers have government-appointed cameras. Usually they're not going to take any type of video unless they need to see an operation in place. I have never been on a construction site where video is ran. Usually it's pictures taken. So they're not, no, they are not going to record any audio. I've never seen it.
Typically, and this is the important thing to keep in mind, once you're talking to OSHA, they've probably already taken the video or the photo that they needed to catch us in presumably an unsafe act. The two worst things that happen for me when I'm and Derek, when we're trying to defend our position is we don't get honest feedback from our people, right? If I say, I know for a fact Todd was not doing this, and then they let me go for 10 minutes and say how great Todd is, and he's been in the industry and all this training, and he sits on all these boards, and then they hang up a photo, and they show Todd doing that thing that I just swore he didn't do. I'm a hell of a salesman. I can't sell that. You know, I am now painted into a corner. But if I know, hey, Trevor, I screwed up, I can have a different approach with OSHA, and I can negotiate a settlement or an outcome that may be better than I'm at their mercy and now I'm asking for their forgiveness. So do recognize they probably already have the documentation. So don't fool us. We'll find out in the investigation the truth, and let me tell you, I'd really rather know the situation I'm going into because you guys tell me than go in there and get my head handed to me. That's not only embarrassing, but I just lost any position I thought I had going into this situation. I was going to say something else about the documentation. You should be accompanied when they're interviewing. And I think what Terry said about, hey, can I get back to you? The thing that we tried to stress over the years is it is perfectly okay for us to get back with them with a written statement. You know what? You're asking me a complex answer. I want to make sure I'm answering accurately. Would you give me that question in writing? I will respond in writing. And that's fine. It's actually kind of sketchy. I was on an OSHA inspection when I was 17. I was running the kettle. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I caught the kettle on fire. I used my fire extinguisher to put out the fire. OSHA showed up just about at that point. And I had a discharged fire extinguisher. Now it was like my fault. There was no fire extinguisher. I literally had it in my hand. I just used it. They asked the guy the safety program. My response was talk to the foreman. Their documentation was, I have no knowledge of the safety program. That was a $10,000 bill for that. Try to explain that one at the kitchen table, right? Discharged fire extinguisher. So even though I knew what not to say, I'd been relatively coached at 17 or 18 years old, they twisted what I said. And so it's, I don't know is a bad answer. I'd like to get back to it in written form. That's a good question. When we discuss that with my union representative and my foreman, I want to make sure that we're answering that completely. Those are fine. Those are stall tactics. You're not being evasive. You're just trying to answer the question. The other thing is if they're asking Todd questions, it's really reasonable for me that's maybe accompanying Todd, write down the question, write down what Todd said. Right? So that way an hour later, when we're debriefing, we can see what everybody was asked and how they answered. So if we need to go, you know what, you asked some questions about this, we wanted to give you some further, detail that maybe wasn't provided in the oral interview. We can help coach that, because that's permissible. We have time to respond. Any more for Derek? Derek, really appreciate you coming today. Happy to have you on our team.
So this is an example of a rush job, improper planning, and what we're trying to work to avoid.
Hey, how's it going?
Is this the last of the load?
Yep, got here as quick as I could.
All right, we've been waiting on this. I need you to get up there, all right?
Okay.
What? Yeah, I know. Look. I need that stuff tomorrow.
I'll get right on that.
Are you okay? I can't move the crane. Listen to me. Don't move. That whole area could be energized. What do you mean, don't move? You're not in any danger if you don't move. Look, I'll call the power company right now.
When a high voltage power line has been contacted, the ground around the point of contact can be energized for a great distance. If you can't move the machine out of contact and are in no danger, stay put until help arrives. If you are in immediate danger and have to move, keep your feet together and slowly shuffle at least 10 meters away. Your feet should move no farther than toe to heel, never leaving the ground.
For more information on working around power lines, go to WorkSafe BC.
All right, planning ahead. Stay at least 20 foot away overhead power lines. Evaluate the workspace and plan access accordingly. Pre-site inspection form should be completed and reviewed with the crew prior to setup day. Alternative lifting equipment may be required for the site. I know this year we were working around power lines on Brooklyn Library, and we used a lull to load everything on the job site. So evaluating the equipment is important. Be aware of equipment proximity to power lines and set up warning flags so everyone knows, the area of access. Staying away from power lines. Do not lift near power lines, ever. Power lines must be moved or de-energized and grounded by the utility. Mark and maintain that 20-foot minimum clearance. And adhere to OSHA requirements. You can always refer to Table A for further information. Table A stands for the higher voltage, the further away you can be. For tag lines, non-productive lines, fiber ropes.
Hi, I'm Bob Berry, and today we're going to talk about how to avoid electrocution injuries when conducting lifting operations near power lines. Electrocution hazards have consistently caused more fatalities on construction sites than any other type of accident. Job site safety begins with an overall awareness of your surroundings at all times. It is very important to do a walk-around assessment of the job site prior to setting up the crane. During a walk-around, always make notes where power lines and underground utilities exist and plan your access route accordingly. OSHA regulation provides 3 options for working close to power lines: de-energize and ground, mark and maintain 20-foot clearance, refer to Table A clearance. When working within 20 foot of the power line, The 2010 OSHA rules require that you refer to Table A for proper clearance. Only if the voltage of the power lines are known and verified with the line owner. When possible, it is always safe to de-energize the line by contacting the utility owner. Once the clearance requirement is known, the OSHA 1926-1408 standard requires the controlling entity to mark hazard areas at ground level and with an elevated line to indicate the safe operating limits, and a designated spotter must always watch this area when using Table A. Cones or flags should also be used to mark other utilities, voids, and hazards. And remember, proper planning, awareness of surroundings, good communication always makes for a safe lift.
Going back to that pre-site inspection, so we're working to revamp that a little bit more thorough for documentation on our end and for the customer. Heavy cranes setting on an area, if any concrete gets damaged, we're looking to document all that ahead of time. And then crane signal review. Signals need to be clear and concise, and you need to be in contact with the operator. Dave may not be out there all the time, it may be a rental, so make sure that you know the crane signals and can articulate them to the operator for a safe way.
A basic crane is designed to hoist, lower, and horizontally move a suspended load. Most cranes move the load to the crane or away from the crane by moving the boom up and down. To signal the operator to boom up, extend one arm, making a closed fist with your thumb extended upwards. Likewise, turn your hand over so your thumb points down to signal the operator to boom down. Keep in mind, this also affects the load radius, making it shorter or longer. To increase or decrease the load radius without raising or lowering the load, open and close your fist slowly while making the boom up or boom down signal. This indicates to the operator that he should boom up and lower or boom down and raise the load. Cranes can also swing a suspended load horizontally. To swing the crane, extend one arm in the direction the crane should swing, pointing in that direction with the index finger. To raise or lower the load, using the hoist functions, point downward or upward using the index finger and making a circular motion. To stop a function, extend one arm to your side and move your hand horizontally to the ground. For an emergency stop, use both arms. When working with cranes featuring telescopic booms, the boom may be extended or retracted, also using hand signals. To do this, place both hands in front of you with your fists closed and thumbs extended, pointing outward to extend the boom, or pointing inward to retract the boom. These are just a few of the most basic hand signals every qualified signal person must know before flagging for crane operations. According to OSHA 1926 regulations regarding cranes and derricks, only a qualified person that understands the signals and functions of a crane may signal for a crane lift. And remember, proper planning, proper training, and good communication always makes for a safe lift.
Alright, we already have the parade. Anyone have any questions on crane signaling or power lines? Alright, with that, I will hand it over to Carson. And he's going to be going over the focus building.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Carson. I'm with Cleveland Building Restoration. If you don't know who I am, today I'll be covering the Focus 4 hazards. They still are to date the deadliest hazards that occur in construction that we encounter day to day in the workplace. So first, we're going to start with falls. So the definition for falls is a hazard, meaning A fall hazard means any condition on a walking or working surface that exposes an employee to a risk of harm from a fall on the same level or to a lower level. Falls are the leading cause of death in construction. So the way we can prevent fall hazards is to plan ahead to get the job done safely. How will the job be performed? What tasks will be involved? What safety equipment is needed for that task? And providing the right equipment for the right job. At any work that's higher than 6 feet, and personal fall arrest and correct equipment will be provided to complete the job safely. Train everyone to use the equipment safely, and employees must be trained on how to effectively use the equipment. Question, how do you prevent falls in your job day to day? Can anyone give me some examples of equipment that we may use? Anybody? What's it? This is.
Tractors.
Good.
Raptors.
Good. Guardrails. All different stuff we use day to day. So I just want to take a moment to emphasize that. The second topic we're going to be covering is caught in between. So per the definition of OSHA, caught in between hazards are defined as injuries resulting from a person being squeezed, caught, crushed, pinched, or compressed between two or more objects, or between parts of an object. So the way we can mitigate this again, the highlight on this is to plan. The best way we can avoid injuries and have a safe workplace is to plan ahead and understand what our hazards are prior to starting work. So to plan ahead to prevent caught in betweens is to foresee how the job will be performed. Be certain you and your crew have the proper training, that everyone's a competent person and understanding what they need to do to be safe. And setting up the equipment correctly. The equipment's only going to protect us if we use it the right way. And if not, then we're living on a prayer with that. So, and then review safe practices for the work. Use barricades to prevent accidental contact, as well as never place yourself in a position to be caught in between. Again, I'm looking for a couple examples that we can't throw our hands up on, a couple examples that we may encounter in the workplace of caught in between hazards.
Basic work truck.
Yeah, work truck, that's a good one. Jeff?
Doing a load in a wall or something that could be in the way.
So for like the roofing standpoint, your buggies and a wall, you guys are on the wall, driving a buggy on the roof, and someone's tearing off on the wall, pulls it back to you, and the thing gets away from you, that could be an example there. And for the masons, if you have a suspended load, the wall, we're running the wall around, moving brick, moving mortar, that's an example. So again, I'm trying to ask you guys these questions so you're cognizant and you can think about these in your applicable jobs and your workspaces. Okay, so the next topic that we're going to be covering is struck by hazards. And the definition of a struck by hazard is a forcible contact or impact between the injured person and an object or a piece of equipment. So for this, what means of prevention is secure tools, materials, and overhead loads. Use proper tow boards, netting, etc. where needed. And use extreme caution when using pneumatic and hydraulic machinery. Again, any examples? Anyone can provide some examples of what we use, or what we can use? It's something that was brought to my attention this year, meeting with one of our scaffolding companies, that we're probably going to start integrating on job specifics, jobs specifically downtown. An issue that we're having, we haven't had an issue, but to prevent the issue, on our swing scaffolds and we're working at heights, obviously we're putting overhead protection down, but we're not putting lanyards or anything on our tools. And we're working suspended over a scaffold all day, cutting out on the wall, working on bricks. And as I know, some of you metal guys who are working on the edge with your hammers, your nail guns, whatever, you're stripping in your metal. I think it's something that I'm going to start pushing personally at CBRs, the lanyards for the tools. I know it's not always the best case, but I think we need to identify the hazards in our work environments. And, maybe we're not protecting our crew in specific because our crew aren't below us, but there's other pedestrians that we need to be considered in that. So when you're also evaluating these hazards, don't just think about you and your team. Think about the whole job site and your surroundings. Okay. The last section is electrocution. Results when a person is exposed to a lethal amount of electrical energy. So ways we can prevent electrocution. electrocution, just to keep them a safe distance away from power lines. If you notice on the left side of the screen here, there's a diagram. It's pretty similar to what the crane standard is, just for safe clearance distance. Have the utility company de-energize or install insulated sleeves on the power lines. And then use flags, warning lines, and barricades where needed to prevent people from entering those areas. And then day-to-day practice that we do, only qualified personnel should be working on the electrical equipment. Employing the GFCIs on all your electrical equipment. Three-way pigtails, that pretty much all you should have on your trucks and should be using anytime you're using those order tools. And then extension cords should be inspected regularly and removed from service, red tagged if there's any kind of breaks or frays in there. If any questions, that's all I have.
Okay, so electrical safety. I'm Aaron Chamberlain, for those of you who don't know me, project manager with Warren and mainly focused on total roofing. And for electrical safety, this really involves production, service, sheet metal, masonry, whether it's the hand tools or power tools we're using every day, and or welders, and also a little bit what Jimmy touched on with the cranes and obviously electrical lines and what we're around them. So to start off, always remember, every day visually inspect all your electrical equipment before use. Remove any equipment with frayed cords, missing ground prongs, cracked tool casings, etc. from service. So if you see something wrong, get it out of service right away, tag it, get it into the shop, and get it off the job site. Apply a warning tag to any defective tool, like I just said, and do not use it until it has been properly repaired. So safe practices when using electrical on the job site is perform a hazard assessment of the job site, inspect the equipment and any installations, eliminate unsafe situations in the work environment, stay alert and do not allow carelessness, barricade the work area, if you're, like I said, around power lines and what have you. Use GFCIs on all connections. Use power tools and equipment as designed. And call the power company to de-energize lines. Don't chance it. A lot of times, if we can get it to shut down, if we're tearing off a roof or Jimmy's putting new gutter on somewhere, and they can't turn it off. A lot of times, we do contract that out to an electrical company that actually is able to blanket the line. So common citations are no GFCIs or AEGCPs. Tools have no grounds. Lack of training when near power lines. Again, that was discussed in the training and a little bit there with Carson. Equipment not approved for classified locations. Guarding of live parts and flexible cord strings relief. So a big part of using electrical on the job site is, it goes back to everything else we talked about, is fall. So electrical shock can also cause indirect injuries. That would be fall in this case. Workers in elevated locations who experience a shock may fall, resulting in serious injury or death. Imagine you're using a power hand tool while on a swing stage or on a scaffold, or sheet metal guys, if you're up on a ladder and you receive an electrical shock from a damaged power tool. Obviously, we have our PPE with fall protection, but that can cause a fall. Things to check regularly. Temporary power cords, cuts, bends, beyond normal wear, ground plugs missing. Check for GFCIs on connections. Stay at least 10 feet from the overhead or buried power lines. And then over here it just says, say no to electrical hazards. Before you turn it on, make sure you say no to our outlets, motors, or circuits overloaded. Our cords running near heat or water sources. Our cords twisted or tangled. Do I see sparks or smoke? And are my hands wet? Am I wearing any metal jewelry? So this gets into the GFCIs. GFCIs are intended to quickly interrupt the circuit in the event of a ground fault to prevent electrocution. GFCI will break the circuit when a leakage of 5 milliamps or more is occurring, usually within 1/40th of a second. Pretty quick. GFCI requirements pertain only to temporary wiring on construction sites.
exceptions for kitchens and other wet areas. Must provide approved GFCIs on all 120 volt, single phase, 15 and 20 amp receptacle outlets, and no GFCIs does not prevent shock. And that's electrical safety. Electrical safety, shocking, no?
All right.
Okay, so our next session topic is fall protection. My name is Margaret Boyland, and my role here is the operations manager. So I do a little bit of everything, and I'm always happy to help in any situation that arises. So I hope every day in your life, at work and at home, is full of sunny blue skies, green lights, smooth sailing. But we all know that we're here for training today because we need to be ready for not the sunny sky, green light days, but when situations arise. So I know what I'm doing. I've done this all the time. I've been in this situation before. Well, even one step before that, you've been trained. So if you're driving in your car, you've been trained. You know what to do with these traffic light situations. You're competent. You hold a license. Some people are even considered masters because they have trained others through the years. All of a sudden, in a split second, the situation changes. You still know what you're doing, right? What are you going to do in this situation?
Slow down, prepare to stop.
The technical answer is you prepare to slow down. But what do we really do?
Go through it.
We look for cops before we go through it, right? That's going to be one of the first things you do. You're starting to assess the situation. So you look around, you determine, are there any cops? The next part of your analyzing goes a little step further and you think, okay, where am I in the intersection? How far into it am I? How far before I approach it?
What's the speed limit?
What's the speed limit?
How changes how fast the light's going to change.
How fast does this light change if you know the intersection really well? Oh, this is a really long yellow. How much time do I have? You have 3 seconds, you have 5 seconds. Some lights you have 7. So you're kind of analyzing what you're going to do. You're assessing. Well, in this situation, it's sunny. It could be raining. It could be snowy. That does determine what you do in all situations. Well, I think I know some of you pretty well in that you're competitive. And by human nature, some piece of this puzzle, all of a sudden, you want to win. You have that desire to win. And you're going to take control of the situation, and you've decided. You've made the decision. There aren't any cops around. It's a long yellow. I'm pretty close to the intersection. I'm not going that fast. I'm just going to speed up a little bit more. In a split second, the guy in front of you hits their brakes and stops. All of a sudden, I'm mad because I knew I could have made it through that light, but he's taken that power away from me. He's changed the situation again. And I, in some reason, feel as though I've just lost. Well, in all of our lives, we're filled with these really great examples that you see all the time. You know them. A yellow traffic light is an easy analogy of a safety situation where you're trained. You know what to do, especially with fall protection. You know the hazards. You know how you're supposed to prevent yourselves from being in harm's way. You shouldn't run a red light. So why get to the point where it's red? Err on the side of caution. Slow down a little bit. Your safety is more important than putting yourself in harm's way because things change in a split second. So I'm going to ask all of you to help me in this process. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about the 4 most important people in your life. The 4 people that you do not want somebody else to run a red light on and hit. The 4 people that you care about more than anything. Can you see them smiling? Aren't they who you work so hard for? they're worth it. And so are you. And so as you open up your eyes and you can still hear those names of the people, these are my 4. They're who I care more about than anything in the whole world. It's my husband and my 2 girls. And never would I want to put myself in a situation where I couldn't be there for them. But a piece of the puzzle is me. I need to make good choices. So as you're looking for motivation to stay attentive today, which most of you have heard this message more than once. Some of you have heard it 5 or 10 or maybe even 20 times from some of the same people. It's hard to come up with new ways to make our training impactful when it's the same facts year after year. I want you to find the motivation in what's most meaningful to you. And I think it's what you go home to every day. It's your wife. It's your brand new little baby that you just brought home from the hospital. It's your parents that you've seen work so hard in their life that now you're the caretaker for, and you need to help them in the last stages of their life. There's a lot of people who need you, and we need your help to make sure you get home safely to them. So with your safety motivation, a new idea that I want to ask you to be charged with is, what's your safety legacy? Because I know all of you are skilled craftsmen, and you deliver great quality roofs, and you're proud of your workmanship, but part of what you're proud of, I know, is your safety legacy. So I want 3 things to influence you. I want what you know, what you do, and what you care about to lead your decision-making for safety. Because if you think about those things, you know better. You're trained. Your actions are done with intent and what it's all really about anyway. Use those as your guide to be your safety legacy, because you don't want to be known as the knucklehead who was careless. All right, OSHA. It's our guide of how to be safe, and it develops a framework for us to create our safety policies. So in 2015, they had about 4,800 people who didn't make it home at the end of the day to their 4 people that they care more about than anything in the world. 93 people a week, or 13 people dying every single day. Those are big numbers. But compared to 1970, where 38 people were dying, we've come a really long way. So what does that tell us? They're making good rules. We need to follow them, and we'll all be safer. Warren Roofing's history and trends on simple accidents are right in line with that. We're employing more people, working more hours, and we're having less accidents. So we're falling right into developing a better safety program, and we're keeping more people working more safer. So we're proud of that, and we want our trend to continue. As they narrow down of all the people who experience fatalities in work, of all the people who die, 1 in 5 are related to construction. It's the highest industry. It's why our insurance rates are so high. It's why you work in such a dangerous environment, and we recognize that, and we need to keep you prepared and informed of everything that's changing. Drilling down a little bit more, falls are the highest of the fatal 4. And falls are most likely to come from a fall protection violation. So that's why we're going to spend a big chunk of time talking about fall protection. You'll also see the other topics that we'll talk about later this morning. But these fatal 4 have also been referred to as the focused 4. So when OSHA's going to do a job site inspection, they're focusing on where people are having the worst accidents. And that's why they arrive on our job sites more than most other situations. We're reminded to do our training and to provide the right equipment, and that those things go hand in hand. You need to be trained in how to use the right equipment. You need to be provided the right equipment. And with fall protection, that's subpart M. Everybody here today has been trained in these topics. So these are our learning goals. I bet you can answer these questions right away without any trouble. But this is what we're going to get as our reminders before the end of this session. When is fall protection needed? Above 6 feet. Who's responsible for fall protection? What? Everybody. All together. Everybody. What are the different types of fall protection? You don't have to name them now because we're going to go through them. And what is fall restraint? So we're going to touch on these topics before we're done. Guardrails. It's our most preferred type of fall protection. Why? Because it is the best example of fall restraint. When the guardrails are up, it eliminates the hazard of a fall. It keeps you from falling. It's the best fall restraint. Guardrails, we love them. But when you're installing them, you need to be tied off. So that's going to incorporate our next topic that we're going to talk about. The guardrail, the top rung needs to be 42 inches tall, plus or minus 3 inches. Mid-rail, 21 inches, plus or minus 3. Toe boards, the outward force needs to withstand 200 pounds when you run up against it. We're going to see a good example of that in just a minute, too. Our personal fall arrest systems, that's the second form of fall protection, the harnesses that you wear. They have some numbers that they need to be compliant with, and that they need a maximum arresting force of 1,800 pounds. It must be rigged so that you can't fall more than 6 feet, and it must stop an employee in 3.5 feet. So if you've done this training before, you remember how we talked about the average male is 6 feet tall, his D-ring is on his back at about a 5-foot height. How much rope does he have out? Is he wearing a shock-absorbing lanyard? How much will that open? And all of a sudden we would see everybody glaze over, like 6 minus 1 is 5, plus 3.5. How tall is the building? And that got too confusing, I think. The number I want you to remember is 16.5 feet. So if you're working on a 12-foot tall building and you have a ton of line out and you fall, you're going to hit the ground before the harness can catch you. You need to keep 16 feet in mind, that you need to stop. You need not to have a long lot of rope out to get back to the idea of fall restraint, to keep you right at the roof edge, to keep you from falling. And that idea of 16 feet is not a number we want you to ever jeopardize, but that's an important learning goal as well. Okay, the components of a fall arrest system, other than the harness, you need an anchor point. It can be tied off to a raptor or a horizontal lifeline, and have your shock-absorbing lanyard to slow you down. So we're going to get into those, but we're going to watch quickly a little clip of how to properly wear your harness.
Today we'll be talking about how to properly put on, or more precisely, don a full body harness. Guardian offers a wide variety of fall protection harnesses with different webbing and buckle options. The worker featured in today's video will be donning our Velocity harness. To get things started, the first and most important step of using any piece of fall protection equipment is to inspect it. Hold the harness at the dorsal D-ring and make sure all buckles are disconnected and all webbing straps are not twisted or tangled. Should you notice any sort of damage, take the harness out of service immediately and report it to your job site's competent person. After inspection is complete, place the harness shoulder straps over your shoulders, making sure the dorsal D-ring faces out. If the dorsal D-ring is too high or too low, remove the harness and adjust the D-ring so it is positioned correctly. The dorsal D-ring should be adjusted so it is positioned at the upper middle part of the shoulders. Next, you'll connect your leg straps. If the harness has a tongue buckle connection, adjust by pulling a strap through the buckle and locking it in place by connecting the tongue through a grommet on the strap. If the harness has a pass-through connection, connect by passing the male plate through the female plate to create a secure connection. If the harness has a quick connect connection, connect by clicking the male end into the female end, and disconnect by pushing the release buttons on each side of the buckle. Now we'll adjust and connect the chest strap. First, connect the chest strap buckle and ensure that the chest strap itself is positioned at the lower chest level, as shown. And the last step of the donning process is to make all your final adjustments. The shoulder, chest, and leg straps should be fitted snugly, but still allow for a full range of movement. Tighten or loosen all straps as needed. Ensure the straps are not twisted, and secure as much excess webbing as possible with web clips or elastic keepers. To check if your leg straps are properly adjusted, use the hand test. An open hand should fit between your strap and your leg, but a closed fist should not. Proper adjustment is very important here, since straps that are fitted too loose or too tight can increase the risk of injury in the event of a fall. If you followed all these steps, congratulations. You've successfully donned your harness. And now that you're done, it's always best practice to have someone with the knowledge of the safe and correct use of harnesses to ensure that your harness is donned correctly. Use the buddy system to double check your work here, as a properly fitted harness is the key to ensuring your safety in the event of a fall. Until next time, be safe up there.
So I think one of the important pieces that don't take for granted is that buddy system, that check. And when you see somebody out there and you're like, hey, you're getting a little loose, like let's tighten that up. You know, if you fall, that could be more dangerous to you than anything. So if you're gonna wear it properly. The shock absorbing lanyard, it's like your airbag that goes off. It stops the impact from hurting as badly. It will likely still be painful if you do experience a fall and your harness is what catches you. This will make it feel a little bit better. When it opens, it adds 3.5 feet. If it's been used in a fall, it needs to be replaced. If you see any of the red stitching coming out, it also needs to be replaced. We're going to go through before you leave today and replace any safety equipment that you feel you need. And I know beam straps have been a heavily requested item from the first group that we did yesterday. But if there's anything else within your personal fall arrest system that you feel like you need to have replaced, today's the day to do that. Our anchorage points, more and more common. You're seeing buildings being built with anchor point systems in mind. And whether that's for you or the window washers that come after, approved anchor points are more visible on the roof. They need to meet certain criteria and standards. 5,000 pounds of force for an employee that is falling off of a roof. If it catches you before you fall, it only needs to withstand 3,500 pounds of force. Hopefully you'll never need to know those numbers, but that's also what determines why you need the number of fasteners depending on the type of decking. And in the foreman's binder, there is a handout that shows, whether or not you have to fasten all the way down or just a couple or half. Raptors are an anchor point that are on every roof. We've made it our change on setup day that the first lift with the crane is not just the safety equipment, but the Raptor, so that people can be tied off immediately. Use that to start adding our guardrails to get people safe right away. Raptors cannot be used on Tectum decks. It's the only deck that we know that they are not allowed to be used on. Our horizontal lifeline. We're running into these in more of the Kent State types of projects, or where there's anchor points, you can run between two lines. They need to be installed by a qualified person, and you still need to be mindful of how much rope you have out, or if you're using a retractable lanyard so that you can't fall off the roof, even though you feel like you're given a little bit more tolerance in an area. When you're working in an aerial lift, you need to make sure you're tied off at all times. I always find this a little bit enjoyable because when I tend to go to the store, it seems to be when I see people in an aerial lift the most, whether they're replacing the lights above storefronts, and more often than not, they're wearing a harness that's not connected to anything. So while they have their harness on, they look safe, they don't have anything that's actually connecting them. So how could you just walk by and not say something? Well, I tend to get out my phone because we do all these little seminars, and I take a picture, and that gets their attention. And all of a sudden now they'll be willing to maybe talk. And so I say things like, I'm glad you're wearing your harness, but what are you tied off to? And then in a second, the guy, it's typically a guy, he'll reach down and he'll just connect right in. I go, oh, thanks, that makes me feel a little bit better. And you know, it's just about doing the right thing. Looking out for somebody, whether you know them or not, just to keep them safe. It's important when you enter an aerial lift that you do so with your hands. You need to maintain 3 points of contact similar to a ladder. If you've done the aerial lift training, you know some of those extra important steps as well. Warning lines. They have a place in our industry, but it's down on our list of preferred items. Warning lines need to be 6 feet in from the perimeter when there's no mechanical equipment being used, and 10 feet from the perimeter when there is mechanical equipment used. Warn roofing does not favor flags. It's not good enough. That's how we look at it. It's not really going to keep you safe. I think a lot of us take pride, even if it's not our own job that we're working on. As you drive through the city, you can spot Warren Roofing job sites with our beautiful guardrail systems. They're ours, and I think it's neat when you're on the freeway and you don't even know a setup has happened, and there it is, you know. With warning line systems, they have certain standards of how tall they need to be. They need to be 34 inches at their lowest point. The idea there is that if the flags get a lot of slack, it becomes a trip hazard, and it's out of the sight of vision for somebody walking, carrying something. Their tensile strength is significantly less. It's not going to really do anything if you bump into it, except fall down. They can consist of ropes, wires, or chains, and they need to have flags at least every 6 feet. The distance between stanchions cannot have too much slack, and that's a common maintenance item that if anybody's on site, they're always tightening the flags to keep them from sagging. It's something to be mindful of. We use flags a lot as more of a controlled access zone, roping off an area, not to go in that area, or as a guide from where you come up the ladder to walk as a walkway to get to our area of work. This controlled access zone keeps people in a safe area, and it also lets people know where we're not working. It's a guide. Safety monitoring system. It was 2 years ago that we formally said you can't just use a safety monitor as your form of fall protection on your own decision making in the field. It needs to have the approval of the project manager or the superintendent. And the reason being, without just being a joke, that a safety monitor really becomes the witness of the accident. There really isn't a lot that they can do to keep you from falling or to keep you safe. The rules of the safety monitor are that they have to be a competent person, they must not have any other duties, they must be on the same work surface, and you must be able to hear them. Again, an important piece is this isn't what we want you to do. We want the guardrails. We want you in a harness. Do you have any questions about that? All right. Hoisted areas. This is becoming a little bit more common to see whether it's scaffolding or hoisted platforms. And we're going to talk about scaffolding in depth. But it's important that those hoisted areas be protected with a guardrail system. Often we hear other trades removing pieces of those guardrail systems. Again, we'll address that a little bit more, but when you're working in these areas, you need to have your harness on. Steep slope roofs we do come in contact with, not nearly as much as our flat roof. It's when our pitch is greater than 412, and they have a couple of different standards that can be allowed as fall protection, but we don't really use them here like safety nets. Holes and covers. This, to date, one of our most greatest potentials for a catastrophic accident happened with a journeyman, it happened with an apprentice. He was coming out of a different local. We were working just in Akron, and just to paint the picture, the regular foreman wasn't able to come to work on a Saturday because his mother-in-law had passed away. So it was right-hand man leading the job. And it was new construction with a general contractor that we don't work with very often. And the apprentice, who had 2 years' experience, his father is a journeyman roofer, the apprentice picked up a piece of plywood that was on the roof. And as he picked up the piece of plywood, he stepped right into a hole and he fell 26 feet. He really could have died because he landed on concrete. This little example shows how fast holes can be dangerous and what we need to do to protect ourselves against holes.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites and might be disturbing for some people. All scenes are based on true stories. 2 workers were framing the walls of a new 2-story house with a basement. They were working on the 2nd floor near an open stairwell. There was no guardrail or floor cover, and the workers were not wearing personal fall protection. After framing one section of a wall, the workers raised it and moved forward to put it into place. While moving forward, one of the workers stepped towards the unguarded stairwell to hold the side of the wall section. He fell down the unguarded stairwell opening. He fell 20 feet and landed on the concrete basement floor. He died from fatal head and internal injuries. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. Originally, the workers were nailing in the boards to frame a section of the new wall, and the stairwell was not protected by a guardrail. Now, the stairwell is protected by a guardrail as required by OSHA. As before, the workers are moving forward to install the completed wall section. This time, as the worker steps toward the stairwell, the guardrail stops him. He continues forward to place the frame section in place. Another way to protect workers is by putting a proper cover over the stairwell opening. The cover must be secure. As shown here, the worker steps onto the cover and continues to put the section in place. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
Okay. So we have done an excellent job at our fall protection at roof edges. We are focusing now more on fall protection within the perimeter of the roof, the holes in the roof, the skylights that are being cut through, the hatch being left open by other trades constantly going up and down. Those hazards seem to be almost more dangerous now because we've mastered and come so far with our exterior protection. So internal fall protection hazards of stairwells, hatches, holes, curbs need to be taken care of with proper precaution. We need to cover them, mark it with hole, secure it. It needs to be able to withstand twice the expected load. You can use flags to cover a hole as well, or a skylight area, just to keep it demarcated that we're not in that area. Ramps or walkways also need to have guardrail systems on there. Some new construction and remodeling or renovation projects where they're changing elevations, you see ramps being built by the general trades for us to use. If we're using them, they still need to be safe for us to do it. And if there aren't guardrails and toe boards in those situations, it's appropriate to ask them to be corrected. In some of our big projects, like at the Q, as you were approaching your work area, you came in contact with other dangerous situations. If you were to fall, you're not just falling a great distance, but you could be falling into water, which would create a drowning situation, which would complicate your fall that much worse. So we need to be aware of other hazards that complicate fall hazards. Openings in walls that are greater than 30 inches or 18 inches high. So in roof elevation changes or where there's doors and thresholds, we need to put a little guard protection so that that's recognized as a fall hazard as well. With any good safety program, OSHA tells us that you could have a program, but you have to show that you're educating people on your program. You're doing retraining, which we're doing today, and we do all throughout the year with toolbox talks. But also, you have to enforce your policy. And while nobody likes getting pulled over by the cops and getting a ticket for running that yellow turning red light, nobody really wants to write anybody up for a fall protection violation. But it's the necessary evil to keep the importance and the value of the policy. So the first time it happens, it's a stricter policy. You're removed from the job and it's 1 day off without pay. The second time it happens, it's 1 week off without pay. We've never had to go further than that. We hope we don't. Because although the third offense says it's 1 month off without pay, we don't want to get there. You know, the 3-strike policy exists, but we'll avoid it at all costs because we'll do retraining to help you in the process. Does anybody have any questions? So let's recap our goals. When is fall protection needed? Working above 6 feet? Yes. Or when there are holes, around holes. That's the other big idea this year. Who's responsible for fall protection? All together. Everybody. Everybody's responsible for fall protection. What's the preferred type of fall protection? Guardrails. And what is fall restraint?
Not having excess line, allowing you to fall.
It keeps you from falling, yes. So you're restrained from falling. Protection is what catches you from a fall. Restraint is the guardrail that blocks the fall, or the retractable lanyard that catches you when you first start to fall. Thank you for paying attention.
Hey guys, John Arsenna with the Warren Roofing side. I'm a salesman. I'm going to talk to you about scaffold safety. So, scaffold safety. 9% of all construction deaths are scaffold related. Okay, so 1 out of every 10 deaths in our industry occurs while dealing with scaffolding. 1/2 of all scaffold accidents occur because of faulty scaffolding. Think about that. 1/2 of all accidents while using scaffolding occurred because of faulty scaffolding. That means that those accidents are preventable. So 2 of the basic types of scaffolding that we have, this one's a supported scaffold here. This one's an aerial scaffold. And these are the 2 types that I know the roofing side uses the most. The
as well as sheet metal. And we're going to talk a little bit about suspension scaffold as well that CBR uses a little bit. What are some of the types of scaffold hazards? Who knows one of the types of hazards? Fall protection. Fall protection, so falls, right, slips. Maybe there's no guardrails. Maybe you're not using a personal fall arrest system. What else?
Gaps between the scaffolding.
Gaps between the scaffolding, right, issues with the planks. How about overhead?
Materials on the scaffolding.
Materials on the scaffolding, overhead. You don't need to be working on the scaffold for the scaffold to be a hazard. You can be working below it or around it. Okay? Electrical, working on scaffold that's near power lines that maybe isn't protected correctly. How about if the scaffold collapses? We talked about 1/2 of all the accidents with scaffolding is from faulty scaffolding. So if collapse is a hazard. Plank hazard we mentioned. How about bad weather? Ice, snow, wind, all can cause a hazard of scaffolding. And hit by, struck by. You're working on a job site with movable equipment, knocks into the scaffolding. What is this? Inspection tag. Every day the scaffold needs to be inspected by a competent person. Okay, what's a competent person? Someone that can identify hazards and correct them. So at the beginning of every day, a competent person needs to inspect the scaffold and hang this tag in a place where everyone can see it. It's usually at the bottom of the scaffold, the access point. What's our policy with hard hats on scaffolding? Wear it at all times, just like ladders, right? Always wear your hard hats. Here we go. How do we know scaffolding is safe? Solid foundation. This is a plank here put on the feet or the base of the scaffold. But our scaffolds normally put on grass, mud, areas that aren't solid, so these are called mud sills. Scaffold needs to be plumbing level, square, and braced. 20 foot vertically and 30 foot, every 30 foot horizontally needs to be braced. You need a safe work platform, you need a safe access, and guardrails. We talked about the guardrails and tow rails as well. This is a rolling tower. So on this, you need these locking casters. Okay, they need to be locked when we're working on the platform. What are the heights of the guardrails? 42 and 21, plus or minus 3 inches, right? Toe boards here. At what height do you need a toe board? Sorry? 10 foot. You don't need toe boards until you're at 10 foot. Guardrails you need at 6 foot. Cross braces, this gives strength to the scaffold system. Are you allowed to climb these? You cannot climb the cross braces unless they're designed to climb. In most cases, they're not. Do we use a lot of wood plank scaffolding? I don't know if we see that a lot in our jobs. You do. You do? Okay. 2 important numbers to know. 6 inches and 12 inches. This is the end frame. The end support here. This point cannot be less than 6 inches overhanging the end support, and it cannot be greater than 12 inches. Okay, so 18 inches past this end support. This is out of compliance. This is an aluminum frame. I know we see these a lot. This thing right here, it might be tough to see, but it's that little lever on the bottom of the scaffold. It needs to be locked into place. That's what secures the scaffold plank to the frame.
And these are the kind of details, guys, they don't seem important until, we have a high wind event and all of a sudden those planks start getting blown off and become flying objects. And I know we have started inspecting our scaffolding after it's erected instead of trusting the erectors. And we're getting better, they're getting better, but I don't know, and Mike, correct me, have we yet to have one installed properly the first time? No. They're not installed by the guys that are installing them properly, ever. We've yet to have one time where every little clip was installed or every little, the one that I know that's the most infuriating for me is when you get to the top and there's the gate that protects the access point, and it opens out freely. That's awesome, right? So I can fall right off the scaffolding as opposed to being able to swing in and access the scaffolding. But I mean, the common sense stuff, you gotta look at it, check it. We're auditing them now at installation. So when we accept it, it's been inspected. And I know Jim Petrosky's been doing a lot of those. As Jim Rehard probably has put on a fair amount. They are getting better, but just keep that in mind. The other thing is, the other trades using them, just like our safety rails are on the perimeter. What was safe yesterday when it was inspected may not be safe. Somebody might have damaged, removed, somehow modified the scaffolding to where it's no longer safe like it was yesterday.
That's why it's important to inspect it every day, right? What job is this? Crew. Nice. We won a couple nice awards for this job. Here's some scaffold that we had set up while Mr. Parabo was installing this nice looking slate here. We have a guardrail on the back end. There's no guardrail here, and there's no guardrail here. Is this in compliance? Sorry? Yes, it is. You do not need guardrails when the building side of the scaffold is 14 inches or less away from the building. A little bit different on suspension scaffolds. That number shrinks down to 12 inches.
Question.
Yes?
How high can you build a scaffold on rollers, on a wheel?
That's a good question. I don't know that answer. Is Dennis here that might know it? We're going to find that out for you. Yeah.
I think part of the, that's a good question. I think part of the complexity is the size, right? So if it's a single bunk and you go up, you know,
I just said 25, 30, you got it.
well, no, but I mean, if you have a single section of scaffolding on 3, it becomes unstable. Where if you have like a 40 by 40, so like one of the
If you have a 40 by 40, you're not going to put it on wheels.
Well, maybe, but like what we're talking about over gymnasium, we're replacing tectum roof deck, is does it make sense to put a 40 by 40 platform under the tectum so that it's, 2 feet, 3 feet below the ceiling, the joists, so we can roll it to where we're working each day, and that way, God forbid, because this is a building tech had a guy fall and subsequently die. For those of you who don't know tectum, it's like a lot like a ceiling tile, the grid. And so one tile might be bad. So you might be fine all day long, and then you win the lottery and found the one tile that's bad, and you get an express ticket down, right? And so you're otherwise protected with the barricades and whatnot, but you may not be harnessed. So we're talking about putting these underneath. And so in that scenario, having it maybe 30 feet high on a 40 by 40 base, we're going to be moving it not so much to work on, like we're really talking about, but as a form of additional fall protection, peace of mind, whatever, safety. It's not practical in a lot of cases for us to do nets, which is the other way to do it. So what may make sense for a working platform of limiting, and I think Todd's right, I think it's 3 months is the limit. In that other application, we may be able to actually extend that because the base is so much larger. Thank you. But Nicole, can you note that question and make sure we get an answer?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is an example of a suspension scaffold. So it's a scaffold that's hung by ropes. The ropes need to support 6 times the load. So that's 6 times the weight of the scaffold and anything on it. So employees, equipment, and tools. Just like the other forms of scaffolding, you need to inspect it every day. It needs to be inspected by a competent person. You need to evaluate the connections, the supporting surface. You need to inspect all the ropes. This is also important. You need to have a lifeline that's attached to an anchor point independently of the scaffold. So the anchor point cannot be attached to the scaffold itself. It needs to be attached to something else. So here's a stair tower we see in a lot of our jobs. And the access point's here. And it's 2 foot above, 2 foot or more above the working surface. So when the access point is 2 foot above or below the surface you're trying to get to, you need another form of getting to that surface. So here a ramp is used because it's above. We might want to use stairs. That's another example. And if it's below, a lot of times we use a ladder.
I hate to keep interrupting, but one of the things our safety professionals have been noting, this is really true with roofing, but it's probably true with all the trades. When we're going up a ladder and then the parapet wall is so high and then you gotta come back down, it's the same thing, right? You can't just jump off the parapet down to the roof. And so what historically we've seen is maybe an A-frame ladder leaned up. It's not the appropriate use for the ladders, right? So then we're finding short ladders. We invested in several different heights of steps. So and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have fiberglass 2 and 3 steps, and then 4, 5, and 6 is like a steel, kind of like you'd see at a shop to be able to go and get at different shelves like a Home Depot or something like that, where we can actually physically put a fixed set of stairs there. So we have invested in those, so as you're going from one roof area or accessing the roof and that transition is needed, we have those now that can be deployed. The alternative is like what we're seeing here is building a ramp, right? And so some of our crews are very carpentry sophisticated. This may be easier and faster for them. Others, it might be easier to just call and have one of those set out when we're setting the job up. But keep that in mind. That's one of those accidents waiting to happen just because you hop down and twist a knee or it's slippery and fall and hit your head, all of which we've experienced. So learn from our mistakes, I guess. Sorry to get that wrong.
Nope, you're fine. Moving on to ladder safety. This isn't a warm photo, but it does look like one of the warm salesmen. So there are 300 ladder deaths per year. 300 deaths caused by ladders every year. And I was surprised to learn the height at which most people fall from ladders. It's 10 foot or less when they die. Surprisingly. And falls from ladders are also the leading causes of death on construction sites. Here's the ladder, needs to be inspected just like scaffolding does. The rung, you need to make sure it's free of grease, so it's not a slip hazard. You need to have these anti-slip shoes and make sure it's on stable, solid ground. Make sure the rope isn't frayed. Make sure all the working parts are moving free and clear.
Just to interject, the one thing we've been noticing with Derek is our fiberglass ladders, the stickers on them have been weathering. Like, they're still physically on the ladder, but you can't read them anymore. We've been sending out those stickers. So as you're using the ladder, just be mindful if that sticker's not there to let the office know we have replacement stickers. I know this winter we were putting them on and they were falling back off. This was too cold. But that's something that just keep in mind that that sticker is important to OSHA when it comes to that.
4-to-1 ratio. So for every 4 foot the ladder goes up, the base needs to go out 1 foot. Never support a ladder on power lines. That's kind of a no-brainer. And we tie off. You have to tie off the top of the ladder 3 foot above the parapet. Always maintain 3 points of contact. And never carry anything up and down the ladder. One person on a ladder at all times, never two. Any questions?
We're going to talk about personal protective equipment. All right, the reason we have personal protective equipment is because it's a lot of times the last line of defense when it comes to protecting ourselves. So for example, we would typically use a personal fall arrest system, a harness, and a lanyard to protect us from a fall. But most oftentimes we have guardrails on roofs that we install first step of the job, and that's a preventative administrative control to prevent us from having to use personal protective equipment for a fall. Okay? What are some forms of PPE?
Safety bags.
Safety bags. Gloves, man. You guys are killing me. All right, let's slow down. You guys are killing me. I've got fruity candy and I've got chocolate candy. Who is first here? Back there. Fruity or chocolate? Chocolate. All right, pass that back there. Pass that back set earplugs. Chocolate or fruity? All right. By the way, guys, I found this photo. This is a female construction worker. They do exist. They are out there. You can see them on job sites. Just be prepared for that in the future. Oh, we have a few more answers for PPE. What else is out there? Harnesses. Who said harnesses?
Metatarsals.
Fruity. High vis. High vis. We got high vis over here. Snickers. Face shield. Who said that? Face shield? Why don't you come up here? You're standing in the back. You come help me out. No candy for the office. You guys are eating too much already. All right. So respirators. Did we hear respirators? Respirators. Respirators. All right. All right. And by the way, we're doing fit tests today, and we encourage all guys here to do the fit test, the physical, in order to wear a respirator, because we don't want to have you on a job and then have to send you home because we need a respirator and you can't wear it. All right. Hard hats. I scoured the internet for the coolest looking guy that wears that new hard hat. That's a cool looking guy. He's got a bandana on. He's really pulling it off, I think. So it can be done. I know it's not fashionable right now, but it can be done. All right, so when do we need to wear hard hats? Always. Always? Overhead hazard. Chocolate or fruity? Up and down ladders. Up and down ladders. Who said that? Gabe? Twix? Twix guy? Scaffold? Who said scaffold? Back there. Chocolate or fruity? Run out of chocolate. All right. All right, we're going to wear it. Also, when there's a crane in the area, guys, that's probably the most common when we're wearing hard hats. One of the most common. All right? All right. Safety glasses. This is a big one. We are continuously having to remind people to wear safety glasses. All right? I actually got called out by a general contractor superintendent the other day about our foreman not wearing safety glasses. And that is a very difficult conversation to have. So please, wear safety glasses when you're on a job site. And on top of that, when you're working inside the building, you need to make sure you have clear safety glasses on. I'm not actually quite sure if the blue ones are compliant to wear inside or not. I don't know if anybody knows that answer. Yes? All right, so you can wear the blue ones as well inside. So we'll get popped for that too by general contractors. This guy obviously had some type of eye injury. It still looks pretty cool, but I prefer not the patch. Okay. So let's wear our safety glasses. I know at home when I'm weed whacking, cutting or grinding something, and I get some piece of metal in my eye, I think to myself, I did that to myself on purpose because I should have been wearing safety glasses. So keep that in mind. Wear them at home too. Oh, I forgot to ask this question. When do we wear safety glasses?
100% of the time, I'll roof it in the shop.
Thank you. Chocolate or fruity? All right, gloves and boots. These are the parts of PPE that we need to be wearing pretty much all the time. Gloves, not necessarily, but when we're using hazardous chemicals, hot applications, just general light working or tear off, and we're handling sharp objects. So, what kind of gloves do we need to wear when we're dealing with hazardous chemicals? Chemical.
Chemical
Gloves. Chemical resistant gloves, rubber gloves. Chocolate or fruity?
Chocolate.
All right. How about high applications? Leather. Alex, did you already get that? Chocolate or fruity? All right. Light working? Light gloves? Cotton gloves, maybe? That's kind of a tough one. That's a trick question. How about sharp objects? What level? 4. Katie's already won. Who else? Amo? Did you say it? 4. All right. All right, the work boots. We've got work boots for this year's safety gift, so there are no excuses why anyone should show up on a job site without work boots. All right, personal fall arrest systems. We're running out of candy. All right. So, what are the components of a fall arrest system?
Connectors.
All right, connectors. Who said connectors? I'm out of fruity. You're all spent. All right, rope grab. Rope grab. Chocolate it is. Lanyard. Anchor point. Lanyard. Lanyard. Anybody else?
Rescue ladder.
Rescue ladder. That's up there. Chocolate. All right. Harness? Who said harness? Back there. Back there. All right, so 30% of fatalities in construction are from falls. So I know we already talked about fall protection and the equipment that we're using. I know that's confusing. I do encourage you guys to talk to your supervisor, whether it's Mike, Jim, or Corey, about specific fall protection equipment, because we are using it specifically on some of my jobs at the steel mill. We're using them all the time, and I consider them fairly technical pieces of equipment. So I want to make sure you guys are using them appropriately, so that way, if we do have a fall, the equipment works the way it's supposed to. And we need to inspect these components daily. Can't reiterate that enough. All right, in additional PPE, these are kind of tough to see up here. Tyvek suits, when we're using, when we're tearing off asbestos, or we are tearing off pitch, or we're in a confined space where it's really dirty, you guys think we need Tyvek suits. We do have them in the shop, they're available. And I know Dave does send them out with the asbestos tear-offs pretty much automatically, but keep that in mind that we do have them available. Knee pads. Knee pads are another one that, you know, some guys use them, some guys don't. We did have a program a few years ago for some ergonomic knee pads. That program is still in place, and if you do want some better knee pads, I think they're a couple $100, and I think we're splitting the cost pretty much 50-50, where you'll be reimbursed about $100 for the knee pads. And if you want some more information about that, talk to Nicole or Mike after the meeting, and they can help out with that. And then earplugs. Earplugs isn't something we use on a regular basis, but cutting metal deck is a specific one. That gets very loud, I know. Grinding, masonry joints, things of that nature that you're going to be involved with a loud noise all day long. You're going to want to include earplugs as part of your PPE. And then, again, get your fit test done today if you haven't done so. I think there's going to be time around lunch to get that done. So in conclusion here, as a competent person, you need to identify the hazards that may be in place at work, and not only the ones that are in place, but predictable hazards. And make proactive decisions to protect yourself, protect your coworkers from injury using PPE as an option. I thought this little trick with the hammer was kind of neat because I never thought of that. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but it's kind of a good example of PPE as far as, hey, if you know there's a risk of smashing your finger, and you could do something to prevent yourself from smashing your own finger, you should maybe try to do that. Don't hurt yourself on purpose. That's all I can say. Do not hurt yourself on purpose. Any questions?